Thanks so much for joining us today while we discuss GA4. In today's episode, we'll be diving into what to do once you have GA4 set up. And just in case you haven't already, we'll be providing a link in our chat to a guide from NerdPress on how to get started. As you know, I'm Melissa Rice, your host, and joining us are our experts, as always, Casey Marquis of Media Eyes, Andrew Wilder of NerdPress, Arsen Rabinovich of Top Hat Rank, and special guest, Kaylee Larkin, a brilliant and data-driven SEM strategist. Thank you so much for joining us, Kaylee.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. I'm going to let Kaylee kick off this episode by giving us a comprehensive walkthrough of the new GA4 dashboard. And then we're going to reserve the second half of this episode to our panelists for Q&A. And of course, as always, don't forget to add your questions to the Q&A section, which you can find below. And we're happy to see where everyone's joining us from. Keep on chatting us in the chat box. But yeah, I'm going to let Kaylee take it away.
Hypertension Appreciation Day. Amazing.
So I'm Kaylee Larkin. I've worked in search marketing for 15 years. You may have read some of my guides or articles while Googling how to do or how to use GA4, or see my YouTube channel, Analytics in Minutes. Google Analytics shares my content, and they added me to their list of women in analytics in 2020. So I'm going to talk about GA4 beyond the setup. And if you've set up GA4 and you've been looking inside the interface, it's totally different. It's totally different. The numbers are not going to match what you're seeing in Universal Analytics. And you're probably wondering, you know, now what? What do I do? This is totally different than what I've used for the last decade. So one of the things I want to talk about is some pitfalls in our thinking before I dive into the actual interface and show you guys around some configurations and reports. So they really should have named GA4 something different, because the only thing that's similar between GA4 and GA3 are the letters GA. Other than that, the data model is completely different. Even some of the terminology that you see, or the metric names like users, are measured differently there. It's a different number, it's a different metric. So don't try to compare GA4 to GA3 numbers. You were in a car and now we're on a motorcycle. It's lean, it's mean, and there's a lot more to think about. You're going to want to compare. And what I'm trying to say is, like, don't compare. It's comparing apples to oranges. Look at your Universal Analytics data. And if you were seeing like a 5% increase on average month over month, when you look at GA4, look for that 5% increase month over month. That's the best way that you can compare the two. The other thing I want to say is this isn't a one-time setup. This isn't a set it and forget it type of thing. You're going to be working with GA4 continuously as you get started, as you start learning about it more, as you start asking, changing the way that you think, and wanting to know different answers about your website and the way that users are using it. With that all said, let's dive in to GA4. I'm going to share my screen, and then we're going to go through some configuration settings, but I want you to double check before that July 1st deadline. Oh, that reminds me, there was one other thing I wanted to share. People are kind of confused with the dates, what's happening when. So on July 1st, you're still going to log into accounts.google.com. You're still going to see your Universal Analytics account. You're also going to see your GA4 account. You can click on your UA account and you're still going to see all your historical data in there. You're not going to see anything from July 1st onward. So for your historical data, that will be in UA for one more year until July 1st, 2024. Anything from July 1st forward, you'll be in here, you'll be in GA4. Let me move my face out of the way so that I can move around the screen. Some configuration settings that not everybody is aware of. We get there in the bottom left-hand corner, it's a little gear icon for admin. First column is account. We're going to be working within our property column. And down here under data settings, we are going to go into data collection. And need to move my face again. You're going to want to acknowledge the user data collection agreement. When you do that, you're probably going to have to update your privacy settings on your website. I use the software to just keep everything up to date for me. I think it's like 10 or 12 bucks a month. Or you can talk to your business lawyer, have them go over your privacy policy for your website and make sure that you're, checking all the boxes for telling your users what data you're collecting and how long you're keeping it and why. After you acknowledge the user data collection, come into data retention. So data retention is the user level and the event level data in your analytics property. The default setting is 2 months. So it's only keeping user level and event level data for 2 months. You're going to want to extend that to 14 months. Most small to medium-sized websites, 14 months is going to be plenty of time. You're not going to want to be, analyzing data from 3 years ago as to what your users were looking for. You're going to want that up-to-date information of what your users are looking for. So 14 months will probably be okay. If for some reason you need longer than 14 months, you're going to scroll down in your property column and link to a BigQuery project. We're not going to dive into BigQuery today because that's a whole nother beast. You guys will have to have me back for that. But if you need data retention for longer than 14 months, BigQuery is the way to go. And Google has really good documentation on how to link this and how to set up a BigQuery project. Now that we've talked about like data settings, like storing the data in your account, I want to look at our data stream and show you some settings, which is going to change your engagement metrics. So let me walk through that again. Underneath property, data streams, click on your data stream. And under configure tag settings, and then show all. Down here is adjust session timeout. So with GA4, there's different metrics, and one of those is engagement metrics. And the engagement metrics are going to be counted based off these 2 timers. The first timer is adjusting session timeout. So once a user has that page like in the forefront of their screen, so this isn't your 30 emotional support browsers, this is the one page that's in front on your screen that you're actively looking at. Once they start looking at it, the timer starts. Now, if they don't do anything else on that page, after 30 minutes, the timer stops and the session ends. If you're like me, where I open a blog article and I'm reading the blog article and then the mailman knocks and the dogs start barking and I go get the mail and then I go hush the dogs and I realize I left laundry from the day before. So now I'm doing the laundry and then that reminds me that I need to finish the dishes and 45 minutes has passed and now I'm finally sitting down to finish reading that article. My session timed out and I'm 2 sessions, but I'm 1 engaged user. So think about your audience, think about the way your audience interacts with your website and change the session timeout. I can't tell you exactly what you should change it to because there's a lot of different modes of thought on that. One person I follow, they say that you should extend it as long as you can because it's that one person keeps coming back to your website, keeps coming back to your web page. Over the course of the day, that's still 1 session. It just took them a really long time to finish what they were doing. Other people want to count each of those, sessions. So think about it. Think about how people use your website, make this adjustment, and then leave it alone. I don't want you to keep changing it. I want you to think about it and change it 1 time before July 1st. So that's the session timeout. The other thing with sessions is the engaged session timer. Engaged session is the new metric in GA4. It's kind of replacing bounce rate or how we were using bounce rate and time on page. It's timing how long a user was actively looking and working through that page on your site. They have it default at 10 seconds. Now, some people, like maybe if you're an e-com shop, that makes sense because people flip through stuff frequently on e-com. for something like a blog, you may want to adjust this timer because people are not going to read an article in 10 seconds. So you may want to extend that to more like 60 seconds. Somebody sits down and reads this for a minute, they're really engaged with this content. Again, make this adjustment one time and then leave it alone. Because those are, and one more time, just where you get to that section, and then I'll move on to reports. Property, data streams. Click on your data stream, configure tag settings. Move my face out of the way. Show all, adjust session timeout. A few clicks in, you just do it the one time and then leave it alone. Right, let's get into some reports. So, going to walk through the traffic acquisition report first. If I'm breathing laboriously because I am sick and I need to catch my breath for a second.
Doing good.
I'm like, oh, okay. Reporting. So traffic acquisition reports are going to tell us where site users are coming from, how engaged they are with our content, if they're, the most engaged or least engaged on content, and conversion metrics. This one's pretty straightforward, but I want to show you it because it's a good place to start with editing reports, and then I can show you how to customize your dashboard here. I've got time. Okay, acquisition. Traffic acquisition. So this is a default traffic acquisition report. I'm going to walk you through each of these little pieces. Up at the top, right now it's all users, but you can change the comparisons. If you wanted to look at organic search first, organic social, for example, you can change that here. And then in the top right is going to be your date range. So if somebody was wondering, like, how do I compare one day to a previous day in a different week? This calendar is where you would do that. You could do this week, last 30 days, and click compare. And you have a few different options within compare. Preceding period, but matching the days of the week. Same period, but last year. That's where you can get into your date models and comparison date ranges. Okay, so the default dimension in our traffic acquisition table is the default channel group. You can click this drop down and switch to session source medium. This is what you will look the most familiar to you if you like universal analytics. And then you roll across here to see your different columns. These columns are interactive. So if you wanted to select a specific click, maybe some people who scroll the entire way, and then filter your table that way, you can do that. Is there anything else I wanted to show you here? Yes, you can also add a secondary dimension. So let's say you wanted to know, come back to default channel grouping. Within organic search, what are the top landing pages? We can do that way. And then we can see which articles that we've written are the most attractive, pulling traffic in from that organic search. And sorry, my voice is probably low. I see somebody turned on closed captions. I speak softly. But people call it my yoga voice.
I love it.
Let me move my face again. I'm trying to find something specific. So, and then you can find your engagement rate and, filter your table that way so you can see which articles are users engaging with the most from organic traffic or the least. And then maybe you want to take a look at those articles and revive them, refresh them. That is that one. And then let me show you another one that I think is going to be important for bloggers, the referral traffic. So instead of typing in, yeah, I'm in the right place. Aren't you pulling up? Sometimes things freeze in GA4 and you just gotta give it a refresh. So with referral traffic, you want to see the links that are linking to your site, because if you're aware of the sites that are mentioning you, that you're getting traffic from, you could reach out to them for a collab. Or if you are already collaborating with them, you can measure the impact of that partnership. And then from here, I'm going to add session source. And then we can see the users and how engaged those users are on our website. And then maybe we want to continue working with that partner. Or if there's a partner that you're not getting super engaged traffic from, maybe you rethink that partnership. Now, I have a few more minutes, so I'm going to show you more ways that you can edit these reports. Hopefully everybody's still with me. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat and I will try and answer them at the end. Let's use organic search. Let's make an organic landing page report. So I'm filtering to organic. Gotta move my face again. Up here on the top right, underneath your date range, there's a couple things that you can do with your reports. You can edit the comparisons, which you can also do here. You can share the report with somebody on your team. You can do insights, which is really fun. This is where AI comes into play, and any question that you kind of have like a little data nerd like at your disposal. You can click through these drop downs. Maybe you want to know like month over month growth as far as users go, and it just like tells you. So you don't have to go digging through your reports anymore. You can just click through insights. You can also type up here, what are my top events by users? And it will tell you that as well. So you can search up here and ask it any question you want to ask about your data, or you can click through the cards and insights. Now back to what I was talking about. Sorry, that was a little bunny trail. Customizing your report. If you super loved your universal analytics reports and you don't want to learn where, a new report, you can just customize this report to look like your universal analytics report. You can change the dimensions. So let's say, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's go into metrics. You can click on these to make them go away. You can add a new metric. Mine's pretty much already set. You can add any metrics that you want. So pull up your universal analytics report, match up your metrics in here and click apply. And then when you save, don't save the changes to the current report. Keep that one the same. Save it as a new report and name it. We'll just name this and I'm going to move my face again. All right, so after you've adjusted your metrics in your traffic acquisition report, come back over here to reports. Down here at the bottom, you're going to see library, open, click the library folder. Click there, you'll see the report that you just created with the new name. Edit collection, underneath acquisition reports, I'm going to grab my SEO for bloggers report, just drag and drop, and then click save. And I'm going to save the changes to the current collection. And then we can come back out after it says published. And there it is. So you can customize your reports and you can customize your dashboard to look like however you want it to look. Yeah, that's everything I had to share. Hopefully I went through those steps slow enough that people were able to grab that info. I'm gonna pass
Haley,
it back
can
to
you,
yeah.
sorry,
Okay.
before you go, can you explain what the main difference is between the metric and the dimension when it comes to GA4?
Right, sure, that's a good question. Thanks for asking it. I'm going to use this as a visual. So dimension is going to be your rows in your table, like where that information is coming from. And the metrics are going to be your columns, and that's going to be like the information that you want to know in numerical form versus like where it came from.
Right. So when you're creating these reports and you're creating those filters on the side, right? In the sidebar.
Yeah.
you can say, I want to see how many visitors, sessions, and engagement, which are the metrics, right?
Right.
For specific landing pages coming
Right.
from Google Organic. So that would
Right.
be setting the dimension to landing page, the
Exactly.
secondary
Or
dimension.
you would do secondary. You could do it in two different ways. That's why I think I might be overthinking that section.
Okay.
I would probably do, yeah. We would do dimension would still be organic search. I would add a secondary dimension of the page path. And this I would save as like landing page report.
Right. So this report basically, and for those of you who will follow the steps later, this report will show you traffic to specific pages from organic search. And then you can also set
Exactly.
source to be Google.
Right.
Right.
You definitely could. If we did session source medium and then we added a filter.
Right.
If we added a session source filter for Google.
Right.
Oh, where did it go? It's hard to see with my face there. I keep having to move myself out of the
Hit
way.
okay. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And then apply.
Right.
This would be, and then add our secondary dimension of the page.
Right.
Yes.
So this report would show us from Google Organic how many users and sessions for each of the landing pages, and these are landing first touch point from Google.
No, and that's a good question or a good clarification. So the traffic, let me pull this. The traffic acquisition report is session. So the first session from Google Organic.
Right, because that's acquisition. That's like how you brought the traffic in.
Right, by session. If you want user, so the first time first time a person entered your website to be from Google, you would do the same thing, but in the user acquisition report.
Right. And then if you want to see
first
not
touch,
just
first session, first touch.
Right. And then if you want to see the same data, but not for the first touch, you would go through engagement, not so much acquisition, right?
Correct. You could go through the pages and screens.
Right. And then in here, you can filter the same way as you just showed us inside of acquisition by bringing in a source of Google Organic and then the secondary dimension of pages.
Right.
Okay.
So, and then again, just save it, name it something, and then in your library, put it on your dashboard so that you don't have to do this every single time you log into GA4. You just have to set it up that one time, per account.
Right. So you can create these filtered reports for yourself and then title them, name them, and then they'll just be available for you to view whenever you're back. So you can essentially build your own dashboard this way.
Yes, exactly. You can build your own dashboard. Yep.
Right. Okay. And I think a good idea would be, Melissa, maybe we can task Brian with this, is to create like checklists from this, so we can just attach it to the recap, and then people can just download these.
Okay. All right.
I think that'd be cool too.
A note to myself for Brian. And I think we're ready to segue into the questions. How do you guys feel about that?
Let's go.
All right. Haley, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, definitely.
We might circle back to some of these questions with maybe a screen share, but Andrew, I wanted to start this off because I know a lot of attendees were curious. As you may have heard already, they were receiving, they've set them up. They've set up GA4 and they're still getting emails from Google to set it up, and they don't understand why they're still getting these messages. Could you help explain?
Sure. Google is transitioning something like 1 billion users, right, who are using Universal Analytics right now. So if you think about it from their perspective, they're trying to get everybody to set up GA4, especially because they've got this hard deadline of July 1st, right, where the UA is just going to stop collecting new data. And so it's going to be a world of pain if they don't get everybody moved over. It's also really hard for them to tell if you set it up for your universal analytics property because not everybody's using connected tags. In fact, our guide, we actually recommend not connecting your UA and GA4, but instead actually putting both property IDs or tracking IDs in the same tag. So Google doesn't really have a good way of knowing you've done it. So they're basically just erring on the side of caution and sending a bazillion notices out. You've probably logged in and seen that scary countdown timer. So yeah, they're getting an A for effort and an F for not making people freak out. So if you are sure you're already collecting GA4, if you're sure it's working, just ignore those warnings, close them out, and don't stress about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next question, Casey. Will information from the Universal Analytics be lost during the switch to GA4? And should publishers be concerned about saving anything?
Let me just unmute myself here. Good times.
For sure.
Let's see here. I can figure this out.
And to everyone in our chat, we are recording this. We will have the recap posted next week.
Right. So your question was, will information from UA be lost when we convert over to GA4? And should publishers be concerned? And the answer is no. When you migrate from Google Universal Analytics to GA4, the existing data will not be lost. So per Google on July 1st, when we make the change over, Universal Analytics will stop processing data. But I believe, and Kayla can correct me if that's not the case, we have until July 1st, 2024 to actually export that data. So then after July 1st, 2023, we'll be able to access all the previous data in UA for at least 6 months. So we'll have at least 6 months after that date to do it. Now, there is again, I think one of the best practices here is that site owners want to export as much historical data as they can at one time. And so the way to do that is to follow the instructions at this link here. And I'm going to go ahead and paste it over here with regards to making sure that we are able to export out data as needed. Google has announced that come December at some point, and we don't know what that date is, all UA account data will no longer be accessible, which is good times for all of us. Now, this is kind of interesting too, and I don't think it's been mentioned before, but even after you switch to the new GA4, you will still need to export your data to prevent historical data loss. And that's something that we have never had to do before. So the reason is that these free GA4 accounts, we're only going that all of you on the call are going to be using. You're only going to have access to the last 14 months worth of data. It's, if you upgrade to something like an enterprise level 360, you could get 50 months, but no one on the call here is going to do that. So please make a point that going forward, about every 14 months, we really need to make sure that you're exporting that data so you have the ability to do longer offline comparisons. So make a note of that today. If you don't remember anything else today, other than, that it's National Hypertension Day, remember that we need to export out that data every 14 months, just in case.
Very important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Kaylee, do you have any suggestions on which metrics bloggers should focus on in their overall blog health? For example, time on site, a bounce rate, etc.
I wasn't a huge fan of time on site or bounce rate previously and Universal Analytics. Those, unless the user triggered that secondary hit, Google actually had no way of measuring time on site. So if I logged onto the website and I read one blog in its entirety and I didn't do anything else, I'm still an engaged user. I just didn't take another action on the site. So Google doesn't know. My session time would be 0 and I would be 100% bounce rate. That's why I like the new engagement metrics in GA4. So use those engagement metrics, and that configuration setting where I showed you how to adjust that timer is going to be like your best friend for bloggers, because you could say, I want to count an engaged user as somebody who stayed on my webpage for 60 seconds. They read at least 60 seconds of my article. And then, like I showed, you can look at your landing pages and filter by that engagement metric to see which articles people are staying for 60 seconds and which articles are people not staying for 60 seconds. So you can tinker with the articles that people aren't staying with and write more of the articles that people are staying with. So the new engagement metric is really, really great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Arson, I skipped you, but I'd like to just bounce back really to this question for you. What can bloggers anticipate with their traffic after GA4 goes into effect? Will there be any dips?
I mean, look, if you set everything up properly and you're looking at the right reports, you should probably see like a nice continuation of what you're seeing in Universal Analytics. This is not, the question is a little bit confusing because will there be dips? Like if you're asking, will there be dips in actual organic referrals from Google? GA4 is not, change to GA4 is not a change to Google's algorithm.
Right.
Completely two different things. But if the question is, in the case I think answered it earlier, yes, there will be difference in your data just because GA4 collects things and titles things differently. But it should not be too much of a difference if you're looking at the correct data.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead, but yes, I will clarify that.
Oh, I thought you answered it in question
No.
number 2.
No, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. I was taking a nap.
We're jumping back and forth in a time machine here. Sorry, folks. Stay up to date.
Okay.
Good times.
Casey, the next question is for you. So we can riff off that, but some bloggers are hearing issues about sessions, page views not matching up with the old GA. Is this accurate or is this just a rumor?
No, this is accurate. So let's kind of play off what we said. The data is the same, but how you're viewing it is different. The discrepancy between GA4 and traditional UAs is occurring because of several reasons. They're both tracking data differently and they're using distinctively different measurement models. And this is going to lead to variations on the reported metrics, regardless of what customized report that Kayla and others have just leading you to set up today. The issue comes down to the reporting itself. In GA4, there is no real-time metrics. There's a 4 to 8 hour data freshness window now that we did not have in Universal Analytics. So while UA3 is basically real time, that's not the case with GA4. So if you've got data older than 8 hours, it's typically complete. If the data is between 4 and 8 hours, then it's generally partially complete. And then if we have data that's in the 0 to 4 hour window, it's hardly accurate at all. So that means that those of you who like to pull out your phones and your apps and look at everything on real time, you're going to be severely disappointed because that data is not real time. It's just a completely different attribution model in GA4. So you're going to have to get out of this, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock on a Sunday and I usually have this traffic and now I don't. That's very seldom that's going to line up based upon how real-time analytics work. And I think a lot of that is just because this is a resource issue. When Google moving everyone to GA4, the only way that you're going to get any sort of a real-time metric is if you upgraded to something like the 360. And that's just not going to happen. So understand that there's also, besides the real-time reporting, there's also the event-based versus page view-based reporting. Mm-hmm. And GA4 primarily relies on the event-based tracking model, whereas UA was previously on page views. And because of that, there's going to be fundamental difference and variations in session and page view accounts. There's also a difference in the session definition. So I know many of you have asked this question, and so let's go ahead and get an answer now. What does this mean for sites like Mediavine and AdThrive? Well, there's 2 kinds of sessions being put out for GA4. We have the sessions and we have the engaged sessions, which Kayla went into today on the call. Mediavine is still using just sessions, not engaged sessions. So that's good news for us because sessions most closely aligns with how it is. And it's considered as active as long as the user is engaged, okay? Whereas if it was engaged, it basically means that a session ends after 30 minutes of inactivity or at midnight. So this difference is going to determine wildly how people track their metrics. But the good news is, at least for our purposes, for those of you who are publishers, Mediavine and AdThrive should still be using just the regular sessions engagement. So that's going to be a lot easier to use the general sessions engagement than it is to use the engaged sessions metric to determine whether you're at that all important 50,000 sessions a month for Mediavine or 100,000 sessions a month for AdThrive. So just be aware of that.
That touched a little bit on my next question to Andrew. Andrew, do you have anything to add to that? Could you talk about more on what GA4 will or how it will integrate with these ad networks?
Yeah. So right now, the way both Mediavine and Raptive show their reporting is they're pulling in your universal analytics data, comparing it with their numbers for ads and revenue, and then giving you this combined report of revenue per 1,000 impressions, right? And so they're going to need to start pulling in the GA4 data. Both ad networks now have the ability to link your ad dashboard with your GA4. So if you haven't done that, you should definitely get that set up. I've got a couple links. They both have instructions here. I think their reporting is going to change slightly, like as Casey was just saying. And so it's going to be a little hard to compare the before and after, probably. Ultimately, this won't impact your revenue, right? It's just going to impact, so it's just going to impact reporting. So one of the things you're going to want to be looking at is actually how much money's coming in to make sure things are looking correct, because the RPM numbers may look a little different than what you're used to. So let me paste in those links into the chat, and we can keep moving.
And I know that several of you have asked a similar question, which is like, how do we are going to be able to compare, say, June, or May or June 2023 to May and June 2024? And the answer is, unfortunately, it depends. So I wish we had a shirt to give out or anything, but they're not going to match up. It's not going to be remotely the same. You're probably going to have different metrics across the board. There's just going to be a new norm that's going to be going into effect after July 1st. And we'll just have to see what we see when that time comes.
Good point. Andrew, how does the new engagements compare to the former sessions, in your opinion?
So, I mean, we've touched on that already a bit, right? Where Kaylee was talking about sort of, I think the best way to think about engagements is that it's the opposite of bounce rate. So instead of looking at how many people bounce, we're looking at how many people are engaged. I was doing a little homework on this and found a good article from Google that kind of explains the difference and also has some instructions on how to add these two metrics specifically to your other reports. I know Kaylee walked us through some of that, but that has a good little tutorial. So I'll drop that link in. Oops, nope, that's pasting a trackable thing there. And so that'll clarify a little bit between the difference between the two.
Thank you. We're getting some great questions in the chat. Everyone, if you want to add them to the Q&A, that way we can definitely answer them, if not live today, on our recap. Casey, specifically, what are users gaining and what are they losing essentially with GA4? Do you have any ideas or preferences?
Yeah, let's go with 2 gains, 2 losses. We don't want to overwhelm everyone here. There's a lot going on here, but the 2 big gains for users, the first one is going to be the enhanced event tracking. So GA4 focuses on event-based tracking. So you get providing more granular insights into user interactions beyond traditional page views. Now, why is that important? Well, because it's going to allow you to do more on the clicks, the video engagement, the file downloads, all the printables you offer. You're going to have a lot more granular data that you can be able to use to track all that, especially printables or those of you on the call in the lifestyle niche that have a lot of PDF documents. It is like a 10 times increase in the ability for you to track the activity that's going on with those printables. We're also going to have more cross-device and cross-platform tracking. So GA4 facilitates user interactions across multiple devices and platforms, which is something we've always struggled with UA. How many of you have basically pounded your head against your desk wondering what the heck is going on with direct traffic? Well, the whole point of GA4 is to make sure that we've removed a lot of the illusions or a lot of the unreliable data around direct traffic. And that's where this cross-domain and cross-platform tracking is going to provide a more comprehensive reporting option for following the customer journey from beginning to end. So I think that those are 2 very big additions. Again, if you're looking on, the glass half full, that's where I would look. Now, if you're looking on the negatives, well, the 2 big ones are limited historical data capability, which we already mentioned. Like, you are not going to be able to compare everything, fishes, apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And we've also lost a lot of our data. We're only going to be able to have a max export of 14 months at a time, meaning that you better set up alarms at your end to make sure that, okay, my 14-month window ends here. I need to make sure that I backed up that data before I lose it all forever, because that's going to be very important when we do over year and quarter over quarter analysis going forward. And the second one is the variations in reporting metrics. I mentioned this multiple times. GA4 uses event-based tracking as the primary method, whereas UA primarily focused on page view-based tracking. And so this is going to result in a lot of discrepancies, folks, across sessions, page views, because it is just not apples to apples data. So a lot of people are just going to like, man, I don't understand what's going on. According to this, I'm 11 to 12% down over the previous month, you might not be down at all. It's just how the data is actually dropping into the filters to be reported. So you're going to have to give it a couple months and see what the new paradigm is with regards to your average traffic there, because although people are saying that the traffic is supposed to be basically the same, just from what I've been seeing in various client models, it's not remotely the case. And a lot of it involves the fact that there's just so much delay in how Google processes the data in GA4 as opposed to UA. So be aware that it is not you, it is Google, okay? And then have a second glass of wine.
I like that. Andrew, how does GA4 work in conjunction with Google Search Console? I know that there's some questions too in the Q&A about, will Google Search Console still exist? So if you could touch on this, that'd be great.
Yep. Yes, Google Search Console will still exist. It's actually a separate tool, right? So what you may want to do, though, is link your Google Search Console and GA4. So GA4 pulls in your Search Console data, so you can work with that data inside GA4, which you could do with Universal Analytics as well. There's a few hoops to jump through to set this up. I did it earlier today on my own site and summarized those steps. You have to basically go in GA4, you have to basically create a product link to Search Console. You also have to be an owner, I believe, in Search Console and an editor in GA4. So you have to basically own the Search Console account, which most of you probably will. And then you basically select which Search Console account it's going to be, which property, and you can pull that in and link it with your data stream. And then once you do that, that basically pulls it into your report library, and then you have to publish that so you can access it. That's the second step that's a little more confusing. So I'm going to paste in some steps here that you can walk through with that.
Excellent, thank you. Kaylee, is there a way to see AdSense earnings by page in GA4? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, let me unmute myself. I didn't want all my cold sniffles.
I hear you.
And then I was answering someone in the chat. So let me refocus. Yes, there's definitely a way. I'm going to share my screen again and walk through that. So with reports, I showed you traffic acquisition because that's what I have data in my account for. All of those filters and ways that you can edit and adjust things also exist underneath. Monetization will be your publisher ads. If you've connected your Google Analytics or your GA4 with your ad manager, this data will populate. I don't run ads on my site, so I'm not going to have any data populating here. But in your interface will look like this. Right here where it says add unit, there's a drop down arrow and you can change to page path screen class, and that will change your table so that you can see AdSense earnings by page. So one more time, underneath reports, underneath lifecycle is monetization, publisher ads. The default setting is add unit. Click that drop down, choose page path and screen class, and you will see earnings by page.
I too was muted. Thank you. Casey, I want to fire through these next few questions because we've got some Q&A to get to, but the next question for you, Casey, was is there any important reports for food bloggers that you think really stand out to you?
Well, Kaylee did a good job going through those, but basically kind of run through them. The user acquisition report, very, very important. This is the one that's going to determine how users are discovering and accessing your website. It's going to show all your sources of traffic. It's going to allow you to break that down from organic, social media, referral, and direct. And that's going to help you understand which channels are driving the most traffic to your site. So I would say the user acquisition report, very, very important. Then we have the content engagement report. This report is going to help you gauge the effectiveness of your individual recipes, tutorials, all of that stuff. This is where you're going to see the traditional metrics like page views, average time on site, bounce rate, even though it's changed, there's even exit rate on there still. We want to, if we're looking at performing content out in the future on lower performing pages, the content engagement report is what you're going to be looking for. I'm not a big fan of the conversion tracking report. I don't think it's very good. That's where you're going to be using though to do things like the newsletter signups, the content downloads, analyzing your call to action. Someone asked about how do I tell if someone's printing out a recipe? The conversion tracking report is going to be able to allow you to do all of that very, very easily. I just hope that it's a little bit easier for users to use. It seems complicated right now, and I'm not very bright anyway. So again, I would like it to dumb it down a little bit more. That'd be great. So I'll probably have to get someone to help me with that. Site search report. This is, again, if the blog has search functionality, which all of your blogs do, it's going to be very helpful for all of you on the call to find out how people are using your on-site site. We're going to be able to glean things like popular search terms, user intent, uncover content gaps. We want to use that site search report as much as we can to pull out possible long tail keywords that we can use to formulate around existing recipes or to find new magic idea content ideas for new content. And then we have the audience review report, and the audience review report is going to be just an overview of your audience demographics, interests, behaviors. You're going to gain insight into age, location, well, basically anything that you can use to tailor your content. I don't expect that it's going to be used by a lot of bloggers. I think a lot of bloggers would be more inclined to perform a blog survey on their site. You'll probably find that that's more useful with regards to insights. And then finally, we mentioned the real-time report. The real-time report is really not a real-time report at all because there's such a delay in how they're processing that data. It's supposed to show you how to monitor active users, page view, traffic sources. But again, it's very poor. It takes a minimum of about 4 to 8 hours for those users to really go and be recorded on the site. So I don't know, hopefully, and there's been a lot of criticism by this. So hopefully that they're going to refine that, but this is kind of their way of pushing everyone to Google Analytics 360, which again, the vast majority of you are never going to use. I don't know, maybe Kaylee can talk a little bit about this. I don't know if there's anything we could even do in BigQuery that would offset that. I don't think that there's any way that we can get better real-time data. I certainly don't know right now, but hopefully that'll change in the next year or so.
Okay.
Ben on my team just messaged me, and I think he's saying that it's not losing all data after 14 months, right? So
No.
Right. So there is going to be a fair amount of data that's still there, which may be sufficient. I'm going to put a link in with some more information on that.
Okay. Awesome. Martin, for newer bloggers or even the average publisher, do you think it's important for users to hire a professional to get the most out of GA4?
I mean, that would depend on how comfortable you are with setting up your GA4 on your own and configuring everything else. If you have the money, definitely hire professionals. If data is important to you, whether you're a new blogger, you're been doing this for a while, hire somebody like Kaylee to help you with whatever you need, setting up dashboards, configuring, reporting, whatever it is. It's always money well spent to have somebody who knows what they're doing to set things up for you. If you're able to do it yourself, do it yourself. I think what I personally like about GA4 is that, and I might get some heat for this, but they're giving you the data is there, and they're giving you many different ways to filter that data to show you what you need to see. Once you get to know the components and the areas, and I don't know how many of you have in the past used like Microsoft Access, right? Where you can import a bunch of data from spreadsheet and then just say, give me this, and this from here, and here, right? Pretty much the same concept here. Just like anything new will take a second to get used to. I'm kind of liking it right now. So yeah, definitely hire someone if you have the budget and you're very serious about your data and how it's being presented to you and what you're going to learn from the data. Definitely worth the money.
Spell check is butchering Kaylee's name right now, so I'm adding links if anybody wants to find her. Just add links in. Sorry about the autocorrect.
It's totally okay. It always corrects me.
It always does. I know. I've had to go back and forth twice, but I went ahead and added your YouTube to connect with you, and then
that's great.
There's LinkedIn as well, y'all. So, Andrew, I know you've helped clients at NerdPress set up GA4. Do you have any other suggestions on resources or courses people can use? I know that everyone can catch our recap in a week, but anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few really good courses out there. I'm of course going to list Kaylee's website first. She's got some good articles on learning Google Analytics. And Food Blogger Pro has a great course. There's also a Skillshop course that I think is an official Google course, which is okay. Wander Cooks also has a Google Analytics course. Some of the courses already may be slightly out of date. Things are changing a lot with GA4, but I think they're going to be pretty close for what you need. And Kaylee, I don't know if you have any other resources off the top of your head, but those would be good ones to start with.
Great. Yeah.
While Kaylee's pulling that up, those of you who are working with us, I think most of the team is now GA4 certified at Top Hat Rank. So if you have questions, reach out to your SEO leads for those.
And Casey just dropped another link to.
Yeah, it's the same link. Andrew already got it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm so surprised with Andrew today. So much better with links.
I did my homework this time.
What's going on? Who are you and what have you done with Andrew?
Actually, my team did my homework for me this time.
It's Andre.
Yeah.
It's Andre.
I love NerdPress. I know that there was a lot of questions that kind of were dropped in during Kaylee's presentation, but I wanted to hop on one. So Kaylee, directly towards you, what if somebody doesn't have the options under that configure tag setting? We've got somebody, Janice in particular, who's saying that in the show all, there were 5 options when you try changing one of them, but her screen only shows 3. Is there a reason why they would be limited for her?
If she doesn't have full permissions within the Google Analytics 4 property, she probably won't have access to be making changes like that to the data stream. If she does have full access, sometimes GA4 is glitchy and you just gotta reset it. Just keep clicking that refresh button. So if you are the owner of that GA4 property, like literally just close out, sign back in and see if those are there. Because sometimes it's glitchy. Yesterday when I was going through what I wanted to show, I couldn't get the library folder to always show up. And I was like, come on today, please be there. So sometimes you just got to hit refresh. Or if you don't have full permissions, ask for, upgraded permission.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Is there also any way to get GA4 reports to track page views rather than sessions? This has been actually a really common question. Maybe you touched on it earlier, but I just wanted to double check.
I think they do, or you can probably add it. Page views isn't something that I use regularly as like a metric to check how things are going. So I don't know off the top of my head, but I would assume, let me just peek really quick before I say that. Yes. So let me share my screen really fast and I'll just show you. Share Brave Browser Analytics.
Thank you.
Yeah, that one. We don't want to see my question notes. That's not the right thing. So when we are customizing the report, let me back up so we can go through the whole click again. In your traffic acquisition, we're going to click that little pencil to customize our report. Underneath metrics, these metrics that show up here are the ones that are currently in your table. And again, those are your columns. Add metric, and you can add views. We can add that if you don't want that instead of sessions, right? We just click apply. And there, we can see in our table, we have views instead of sessions. When you save, again, don't save the changes to the current report. You're always going to want those default reports to go back to. Save it as a new report. And maybe this is, traffic acquisitions. Just one acquisition, traffic acquisition views, so that you know which report has that view metric.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a
Yeah, totally.
One last one. Will you be able to customize reports on the mobile app? Do you know?
I have no idea. I never use the mobile app. It's one of those things to help keep my work and personal life separate. I only have that stuff on my desktop. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question for you. But if you open your mobile app and you see the pencil icon, that means you can customize the report.
Very cool. Thank you. I know somebody had asked in the chat, would any of our panelists use ChatGPT to ask some of these questions about GA4? Am I the only one? I know I definitely asked getting ready for this episode. How do you guys feel about it? Arson?
Feel about what? Using ChatGPT?
Yeah, to help navigate.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay.
You could
Will
do
it
it, but
have?
just-
Will
it's
it
only
have all the
trained.
correct answers?
It won't. It won't. It's only trained up to a certain time, which is back actually about a year, about 14 months ago. But the good news is that so many people have been inputting data into it that it's able to pull out pretty intelligent answers overall. But you would certainly not want to take everything at a face value. You'd want to make sure you check that against other sources when you can. It's a learning algorithm. So the more people who use it and put in the information, the more it has that information available. But the original training data is still delayed. I think at least 12 months. So we'll have to wait and see if there's another update that brings it closer to all the information. But people forget that there is information about GA4 that is 12 months old, 12 and 16 months old. Google's been trying to prepare us for a while for this. So there is data out there that it can pull from.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. We have another question from Amy. For food bloggers, what do you suggest we set the session timeout and timer for engaged sessions to? Kaylee, do you know the answer to this one?
I specifically didn't want to give people the time because I really feel like that's going to vary. And it's something that you need to decide for your business and how you want to measure engagement. So maybe a good way to think about it would be to look within your universal analytics data and the page view time to get an idea of how long people are spending on your website or on your web pages. And then decide and set it. If it's something that you don't want to mess with, then just leave it be. But think about like the session timeout, right? Not the session engagement. Was it timeout?
Yes.
So that's going to be like, if that person comes back to your website or your web page 5 times within a 12, your 9 to I don't know, how late do people read the articles? Like 11 o'clock, like during the daytime. If they came back 5 times, do you want to count that 5 times or do you want to count it 1 time? So it's kind of a question you have to answer for yourself. Sorry.
So, and again, that's a very political answer. So I'm going to thank Kaylee for that. I'm going to give you the non-political answer, which is that you're just not going to touch this. And the reason you're not going to touch this is the vast majority of people on this call are not going to touch this. And unless we get a clear directive from your ad companies, they're not going to want you to touch this because this has to be a uniform metric across most sites to make sure that you're, for example, whether you're with AdThrive or Mediavine, there's a uniform metric that they're going to be using to determine RPMs and other calculations. And I think that if we play around with this metric too much, it might throw some of those external calculations off, and there's no reason to. So unless we hear something directly from Mediavine and AdThrive, I wouldn't even worry about changing anything. That's a default in this, especially if it involves session calculations or engaged sessions, because we know that those are the 2 most important things with regards to RPMs that they're going to be used for calculation. So again, if you have an e-commerce option, maybe it's different, but I know most of you don't, so you're probably good to go.
All right. We are at the end of our hour here, y'all. And for all the questions that we weren't able to answer here live, do not worry. It will be in the recap. We will address those the best we can in about a week. And so again,
Kaylee will be doing all the heavy lifting on those. She doesn't know yet, but she will be going to be answering most of those.
We dropped the links for
You're going to ghost us now.
Right.
Kaylee, why are you not returning our calls?
Like, I'm
What's
out.
going on?
These guys suck.
No,
At least let her get over her cold before we make her.
yeah.
Right.
Send her some chicken noodle soup. She's fine.
Definitely. And again, we dropped links to contact Kaylee in the chat, but we'll be able to include those in our recap as well. Just, to let all the information from today digest. But yeah, it was as much as we could get done in this episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And, we'll catch you all next month. But again, panelists, as always, thank you for your expertise. And yeah, have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Happy Memorial Day for all of you on the call. Enjoy it.
Hypertension.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kaylee.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Kaylee.
thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.